And welcome back to episode 2 of the Dragon Heads. I'm your co-host, Thorn. With me, as always, our gracious host, Mr. Joe. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Hanging in there, man.
Fantastic. Um, we'll jump right into kind of what we did. How was your 4th of July?
Uh, we went out of town, had a blast. Um, it was a long weekend, but had a lot of fun.
Good times, good times. Yeah, mine. I just kind of chilled out around the house. Both of my kids are 18, full-time jobs. Like, really don't do the fireworks thing anymore. So it was just a nice relaxing weekend. Did a little bit of barbecuing. We didn't get to do D&D session this weekend because obviously we play on Sunday. Sunday was the 4th of July. Everybody kind of had their things going on. But man, I'm not going to lie. I'm really looking forward to getting back in this weekend and seeing a little bit of what this is the city name Omu. I'm terrible with names. Pronunciations suck.
I I think it was Omashu or
Omashu.
Omoshu, something like that.
Yeah. Uh,
For those that want to actually correct us, we're running we're playing through the Tomb of Annihilation,
please,
so it's
because
the city where the temple is.
yeah,
Yes, please tell us how bad our pronunciation is.
I am terrible
But
with pronunciation. So
well, one of the things that I do whenever I play D&D, like I try to make my characters like have simple names. So it's like my monk, for instance, his name is Fury. You can't screw it up.
yeah,
You can't it's not something long and complicated that I'm going to screw up every time I say it. No, my name's Fury. That's it.
yeah. I'm
But
pretty generic with
anywho,
most of my names. Like some form of thorn, or if I'm playing a ranger of any sort, it's usually Lithian, which goes all the way back to my original D&D campaign back when I was in high school. So I've kind of kept that name and just use it as the years go on. But kind of enough about what we've been doing. We got 2 bits of news here, so why don't you take us away on this first bit, and then we'll start to get into our top 5 after that.
well, first and foremost, one of the YouTube channels that I've followed for quite a while. Like I started following him back when they had less than 1,000 followers. It's called the Dungeon Code, and he talked about homebrewing stuff, making variant rules, um, all kinds of stuff, and he did a great job building his channel. And I remember one of the April 1st videos he made was all about the release of sixth edition, and it got a whole bunch of views because hey, April Fools. But it got that was one of the things where his viewer count jumped I think like 10,000 subscribers. And it basically what the whole joke was is he talked about all these changes that were coming in sixth edition, and what really happened is they were all the homebrew rules that he had made up for his home games, for his home different homebrew stuff that he had done, and it worked out great for him. Anyway, he started a Kickstarter, and uh, basically it was to make a 5e supplement, and he was reaching to get fully funded at I think $10,000.
Yep.
They just crossed the $100,000 dollar mark earlier today, um, and all credit in the world goes out to the guy. He's doing great things in the community, and great. Whenever somebody hits a big goal like that on Kickstarter, you just got to give props to him. So to the dungeon coach, great job. Keep up the good work. We want to see more stuff from
Yeah, like, and it's
you. And
crazy.
you had a
I didn't know
yeah.
anything
Go ahead.
about this. I looked at the news article that you sent in, and was kind of flipping through the Kickstarter, and he released it, or he opened the Kickstarter on July 1st, and he, like you said, he wanted the $10,000. and I think it was like 5 minutes and 13 seconds is what it took for him to get the $10,000 mark. Like, so he's clearly doing something correct if he had backers ready to fully back him in the first 6 minutes of the campaign going live. Just poking through it, like it looks interesting. Like I dig some of the rules that he's teasing in here. Um, might have to check this out. But
For sure.
the next bit of news, I'm sure a lot of people already know about this. Earlier today, I got an update on Twitter coming in from the Critical Role Twitter account. I'm fairly new to Critical Role. I didn't listen to Series 1 or Series 2. I'm starting in on the newest mini series, I can't pronounce the name, Exandria's Unlimited. I believe that's how you pronounce it. Um,
Yeah, that's pretty close.
but this goes back to Vox Machina, which I believe that is the first campaign, if I'm not mistaken. They're doing an
You're
audiobook
correct.
of they're doing an audiobook for a book that was released, Vox Machina Kith Kin, and it's going to be narrated by Sumalee Montano. I suck with names. I'm sorry.
These names. I
Uh
love the names. You're
and
good.
and then Laura Bailey and Liam O'Brien are going to be voicing their characters from the campaign, Vex and Vax. So I thought it was kind of cool that covering they did the book, doing the audiobook. I might actually pick up the audiobook so I can kind of get an idea of what was going on in the first campaign. I started to watch the I believe it's Vox Machina versus the Mighty Nine. There was the one video, it's like an arena type thing that they were doing. Like I'm like halfway through it. It's kind of hard to listen to stuff at work, but was digging that.
Yeah.
So just this audiobook coming out. We've got that I believe, let me see. Right now it's just pre-order over at criticalrolebooks.com. So that's going
Well,
to
what I can say about it is that this is one of the several books that they have they have a partnership with Ping Penguin Random House is
Mhm.
I think is the company. Um, and they've released several different books. This is one of the first ones. They also released it was kind of like how they everything happened with them, how they built their company, how they started out, that whole process. Um, they obviously released the Explorer's Guide to Wildmount with Wizards of the Coast, and um, there was one other thing, and I'm blanking out what it is off the top of my head, but they've released several different books. Um, and the crazy thing is that everything that they seem to touch is just gold, and people are absolutely buying. Like as soon as it's available, they buy it, and this is just another thing in the long line of stuff from Critical Role that people are just gonna love.
Mhm. But that's it for the news. There wasn't a whole lot of news like we were talking in the pre-show. It's kind of difficult to find news on D&D. I'm going to have to start searching in kind of crazier places here in the coming weeks cuz we got to get some more news in here. But let's roll right into our top 5. You set up this top 5. We're doing cliche race class combos. So the most basic one. Let's start there. What's going on?
It's a human fighter, and it's now first and foremost. Let me preface this whole list. None of these are bad. They're not um a bad. It's not a bad thing to be a cliche. But what these class race combos are they're all very they either have mechanics that work well together, they have racial traits that work well with their class, And because of this, it was almost like, oh yeah, if you want to build a fighter, be a human. And the main reason for that was you had the variant feat at the very beginning, so you were able to take the feat so that you customize your fighter, whether it be Polearm Master or Shield Master, or just take the tough feat. However you want to do it, each one of those uh, feats makes your kind of customizes your fighter a little bit, but at the same time makes your fighter better. And you don't get that from any other classes or any other races. I'm sorry, but that's the main reason why a lot of people and they took a page out of my book. My first character that I made was a human fighter, and I'm like, well, how do I make this human fighter different and more? And they're like, oh, I'm gonna take polearm master. I'm gonna have a polearm, and he's gonna wield a glaive. And it was just those sort of things that make it interesting. But it's also one like you see memes on the internet of how a human fighter is basic, and you if you play a human fighter, you're just a basic person that doesn't have any creativity. Blah 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 blah. It's not like that. It's just that it goes well together. Number two on this list is a dwarf cleric, and I actually had to think about this one as to why it always seems that this class race combo always went together well. And after I played a cleric for a while, I think I finally figured it out. What it is that they have a +2 to their con. And now I know with Tasha's you can move stuff around, but having that +2 to your con is really important because of the fact that almost every single cleric spell is concentration. It feels like your spirit guardians, your bless, your bane, your um, hold person. There's so many concentration spells that are under the cleric, and one of the best ways to keep your concentration spell up is to have a buff to your con. So even if it's only an extra +1 to your con, it really matters. And it was also the other thing is that the standard for a dwarf is you also increase your strength so that you were able to get into uh, either your heavy armor or your medium armor, depending on what requirements you go, which we're going to talk about later. Sneak preview. Um, the third one is actually kind of an interesting one to me. It's the Dragonborn Paladin. And originally, like when I first saw like the Dragonborn Paladin, I thought, oh, that's a neat, interesting class. But then I understood once I looked at the class and figured out, oh, the main two stats you want for paladins are strength and charisma. Oh, and you get bonuses to strength and charisma with Dragonborn and a breath attack and resistance to that type of damage. It made sense. It just was easy to pin down that okay, yeah, this Dragonborn Paladin is simple, but at the same time, you're like, oh, I get a lot of bonuses that really help out being a paladin. Uh, the third one, you can't talk about cliches without an elf ranger. You get the Legolas jokes, you get the I mean, you name it. It's there's always elves with bows,
Yep.
and that's been since the beginning of D&D.
And
It's one of those stupid things where it's like, what do your elf eyes see? Go ahead.
Elf Ranger was my first D&D class. Night Elf Ranger, or well, Night Elf Hunter was my first World of Warcraft character. Like when you think of, if somebody says what's the fantasy character that comes to mind when I ask you that, for me it's always been an elf hunter, elf ranger, something along those lines. Give me a big pointy ears and a bow with a short sword on their back, and that's what I'm thinking of if I think of fantasy characters. When I saw this list, the Dragonborn Paladin threw me. I didn't fully understand it with the explanation of the modifiers. It makes completely sense. But when I saw the Elf Ranger, I was like, that's you can't beat it. It's in every fantasy movie, it's in every fantasy book. Like it's the perfect cliche. And again, not a bad thing because it just makes sense.
Yeah, and the last one I have on the list is it's the Halfling Rogue. Now, the reason I love the halfling rogue in general is because rogues already have this built-in like safety net when they get I'm blanking on the name of the ability. It lets them roll a 10 instead of whatever below 10. I'm blanking out on the name of the ability at the moment, but it's one of those dumb things where it's like reliable talent. That's what it's called. They get their reliable talent, and it's one of those things where they I don't want to say control the dice, but there's a certain like floor to them that they're like, yeah, we can't screw up. You add to that the halfling ability to be able to hide behind your allies, and the halfling luck feat, where they basically can't roll a one, and it's one of those things that you're like, oh, this is perfect for a rogue because then you can make everything you want for the you make everything you want for this little guy that is able to sneak up and stab him in the back, and it just works out perfectly.
Yeah,
But that's our top 5 list.
I guess I never really thought about the halfling, like coming from World of Warcraft. Uh, I always thought gnome rogues because that's what I always knew. But look, the not being able to roll a one, that's huge when you think about it. So yeah, I guess the halfling rogue does kind of fit into that same kind of thing that I would think with a tiny character jumping on somebody's back and stabbing him repeatedly. I think that's hilarious. But
The other thing with halflings is they're able to hide. Like if you have a medium-sized ally, you're able to hide behind them. You don't need any other cover than your human fighter in front of you. You jump behind them and hide, and then pop out and shoot them with a hand crossbow.
that's hilarious.
It's great.
So last week
So
we
next,
had the backstory from the the thief that you put together. This week I put together a backstory, and it's kind of one that I've been working through for a little while. I love the unearthed arcana stuff that comes through. I love doing like the playtest stuff, and right now they have the Drake Warden Ranger still in unearthed arcana right now, still doing playtest, and I love the concept. I'm doing a black dragon, white drake for this, but you can, with this backstory, you can change out the colors because the backstory will work for any set of dragon flights. Again, I come from World of Warcraft. Dragons are always in flights. So that's the terminology that I'm going to be using. So I'm using the black dragon flight as my character. Helios, born to a prestigious line of Drake Wardens, has been shunned by his flight when the dragon egg he chose hatched a white drake. The bond between Warden and egg is a direct reflection of the Warden's soul. Helios wanted to unite the flights to become protectors of the other races of the world. The Black Dragon flight saw this as blasphemy and exiled him. His only saving grace being that he came from such an exclusive and high-ranked family and lineage that instead of instantly being executed for basically not withholding the values of the flight, he is exiled to forever be a part of the lesser races of the world and not accepted within his own flight. It's a character that I started to put together. I did the Black Dragon as the playable character because I didn't want the stereotypical fire breath weapon. And when I think of the white dragons, I think of too clean, too uppity. I don't know. Like I wanted my playable character to be more gritty, and I wanted his Drake companion to be kind of uh the neater companion to him. Uh the breath weapon once unlocked for the Drake is a frost. The black dragon is acid. So you're getting two different types of elemental damage. It's not your stereotypical like fire damage, but I like the idea of it's not tragic. It like you don't lose your whole family. You're not, at a loss for everything. You're not depressed. He had a The character has a soul that wants to unite and be a driving force of like peace and protection for the world. And like I said, you can switch this up to be anything. If you want to do uh red Drake Warden with a green Drake, you could do it however you want. Now, I do know that the Drake Warden class says that you're able to summon whatever type of Drake that you want when you summon it. I wanted to play it the storyline where I have a direct relationship with my Drake instead of just, oh, you know what? I'm fighting something that has high no immunity to fire damage, so I'm going to summon a red Drake this time, and then I'll summon a silver one next time. I wanted to keep it very cohesive. It's one on one.
Well, a couple of things I absolutely love about this backstory is that one, you're creating a reason why he left, and I think that's one of the hardest things in a backstory is like you need a reason to start becoming an adventurer. Like very few people just say, "Oh, I'm going to become an adventurer."
Mm-hmm.
You know, people have to be kind of desperate in one way or another, and you're giving this character a great reason for that. The one thing that I personally would change, and I think this is more of a meta thing for Dungeons and Dragons versus like World of Warcraft. In Dungeons and Dragons, the two types of dragons, you have the chaotic dragons, which are your red, blue, black, white, and green,
Mm-hmm.
the chromatics, and the metallics, which are your gold, silver, bronze. I'm gonna forget one of them, copper, and I forget whatever the fifth one is. But so the kind of storyline I would see there is if you're a chromatic dragonborn and you have a silver uh silver drake that you're raising, that would be the conflict more than you're a black dragonborn raising a white dragon. You know what I mean? I would see
Okay.
the crossing of oh the crossing of the metallic and the chromatic dragons. Um, and again, that's a minor thing that you'd probably just clean that up with your DM whenever you sit down and talk about it. Um, I could also see this being a very interesting concept, especially if you're playing something like Rise of Tiamat or Horde of the Dragon Queen, where it's everything's a dragon, you know,
Mm-hmm.
and you're stuck in the middle of it, and you're trying to keep your dragon safe. You're trying to keep your friends safe, and you're trying to save the world. It's it's one of those ones that could be very interesting. Also, if you were playing a Storm King's Thunder, it's the other big like enemy of dragons are the giants. Um, so Storm King's Thunder is literally you go through the entire giant hierarchy, and the beauty of it is that because you kind of go through the whole giant hierarchy, having a dragon with you might be a bit of a problem because of the fact that they hate dragons with like I don't want to even say a passion. It's one of those things that they hate dragons on principle. So That would be the only thing I would change about it. Other than that, great
And
backstory.
being I'm not new to Dungeons and Dragons, but being fairly new because I haven't played in almost 20 years and not having kept up with everything. I didn't even realize that the chromatic and then the metallic were of two different alignments. So yeah, that would completely make more sense to have one chromatic, one metallic, whether it's the uh the Dragonborn is the metallic and the Drake is the chromatic. So yeah, I would probably switch that up now knowing that. And yeah, I think it would be fun to play a character like this through one of the campaigns that you're saying is either heavily influenced with dragons or through the Storm Kings one where I could potentially be a detriment to the party if I don't play it right because giants hate dragons. That would be a fun and interesting playthrough. But this is definitely a backstory that I'm going to keep on the back burner. That if I play another campaign, this will probably be the character that I play.
Got it. So next we got our rules corner, right?
Yes, sir.
Now I know you may not have an informatic for this one, but
This
one of the
one
big
I
things that I
do.
wanted to talk about, uh, the armor class. Woo, I'm impressed. But the main thing that I found, and this was one of those things that I kind of found out after I started playing and started reading through the rules a little closer, um, and read through everything, and it was like as I was playing with my equipment on D&D Beyond, that was where I found a lot of this information, and then I would go back to the rules and be like, well, why is it doing this? And for the most part, we all know that there's three types of armor. There's light, medium, and heavy armor. Now, one of the things that they don't really tell you is that the reason you have light, medium, and heavy armor is light armor, you're able to add your full dex modifier to everything. So if you just have the regular padded armor, the leather armor, or the stud leather armor, you're able to add whatever the base of the armor class is and your full dex modifier. If you have a +5 to dex, you're going to get that full dex modifier in addition to your armor. Now, with medium armor, there's a cap to that dex modifier that can go on it. You can only have a max of 2 added onto your whatever your armor class is. And that's the kind of catch-22 with it, is they're like, we want you to have a little bit of movement because you're wearing slightly lighter armor, but only to an extent,
Mhm.
because it's still kind of heavy, still kind of encumbersome, and then ultimately with heavy armor, you get no dex bonus whatsoever to them. It's whatever the armor class is your armor. And also the other catch with a lot of the heavy armor is there's strength requirements in order to wear it. Like even chainmail, for instance, you have to have a strength of 13 to be able to wear. Uh, splint and plate mail, you have to have a strength of 15 to wear. So one of the things people don't look at is that, oh, I'm playing this cleric that is able to wear full plate or heavy armor, and then they realize, oh, my strength's only 13, so I can, but it gives me a penalty. And it's like, yeah, because you don't have a high enough strength to be able to move efficiently in it. And the instance that popped out to me was there was a scene in Critical Role, the second campaign, where they got this, I believe it was a chain shirt, and what happened was is that initially Jester was going to wear it, and she goes around and equips it, and after she equips it, she looks at it because it's a +1 chain shirt, and it was a mithril +1 chain shirt. That was important because she put it on and she goes, my she goes, my AC went down, and everyone kind of looked at her because like you just got a +1 armor. Why did your AC go down? Well, it turns out she has a Dex modifier of 4, so if she's wearing studded leather armor, it's higher than her with a chain shirt, even with it being a +1. And I think ultimately it ended up uh, with Caleb randomly because Matt ruled that because it was a mithril shirt that it was light enough for him to wear, which gave the wizard an AC of like 14 or 15 or something, which that's the DM being merciful in my opinion.
Yeah,
But you had a problem with this in one of our campaigns.
yeah. I was wearing just a regular breastplate, +2 breastplate, I believe it was. And we had a magical set. I don't remember which one it was of plate armor drop that statistically on the plate armor was better. And I put it on, and my AC went down by 1. And I'm like, what is going on? And our DM Matt was like, it's because you don't have proficiency in the heavy armor. I have proficiency in medium armor. So I got more bonuses for the medium armor. So leaving the breastplate on and not putting on the full plate actually kept my armor up at 19 instead of dropping it down into the 18. Because just kind of like with the Dragonborn backstory, I like to play protectors. And I was trying to, get my AC as close to 20 as I could, and I saw that drop, and I was like, yeah, I gained this magical armor, but I become slightly easier to hit. So I put my breastplate +2 back on and gave I think I threw the magical armor in a chest in some ruins that we hit a bunch of stuff in, which we should probably go back and get that stuff at some point if we haven't. I don't think we have. It's still over there on the beaches.
Yeah, just to preface what we did is we had got a hoard of treasure and we're basically out in the middle of the jungle, and our thought process was we can't carry all of this. The only way that we're going to be able to get back to it at any point is if we bury it somewhere, which that sounds like a pirate, like dumb pirate concept, but we were at the point where we knew we were looking for other things and we're trying to get somewhere, but we couldn't do that being loaded down with we had a bunch of there were a couple magic items. There was a big pile of gold, and if I
It was a
remember right, it was
dragon
like
horde.
lower dem right, but it was like there was a bunch of copper and silver in the
Mm-hmm.
dragon horde
Yep.
as compared to a lot of gold,
Yeah.
and it was like we were able to pull it out, but we were at that point of we can't run around with 30,000 copper and 20,000 silver. And it was just one of those things where we're like, you know what? It's just gonna be better to bury it. If we can come back and get it, great. We'll be rich and have a whole bunch of money. If not, and it gets, someone loots it in the meantime, there's nothing more we could do because we couldn't take it with us.
Yep. And uh, just like thinking back to that fight, we fought I believe it was a young red dragon, um, and it didn't even get an attack on us because everyone rolled like every possible stun and blind and every status effect that we could put on this dragon to prevent it from hitting us, and we just absolutely destroyed this dragon in seconds. It was ridiculous. And then the next week,
Well,
we fight a couple of like clay golems, like constructs, and we get absolutely destroyed. Like I almost died. I think somebody else almost died. Like just you would think that we would have the problems with the dragons and not the little clay statues that came to life. I just that's what I love about D&D is we had this epic moment where we absolutely destroyed a dragon and then we got beat up by some statues.
Well, the one thing I will say about the dragon fight, uh, I found out after the fight that the DM was he was using D&D Beyond and was doing the click rolls on there for roll 20. Well, he was clicking on the con modifier, not on the saving throws against the stun of my monk, and I was able to stun it for 2 rounds, which gave us plenty of time to just lay into him. But he found out after the fact, instead of just having a plus, it was like +4 to his con, it had a +9 to its saving throws. So I
Ah,
I chalk that up to uh I talked that, and I talked to him afterwards saying, "Hey, I think something was wrong here." He looked it up and was like, "Oh man, I screwed up big time," because I tried to stun it. And I was like, there's a outside the ballpark chance that I might be able to stun him, and then I end up stunning him twice in a row, and I'm like, whoa, this isn't supposed to happen. And come to find out, he was using the wrong stat, and it was like, he's not going to retcon it, but it was one of those things that made the fight a lot easier than it would have been.
and it definitely was. Uh, but it was still a good time. But speaking of encounters, we've got our 2 encounters. Uh, this week's encounters we've got set up are we're doing a funeral procession, and I think we both kind of went a
Right,
different
and
way, but kind
oh,
of
absolutely.
similar. Like I have a story arc once I saw yours that could potentially tie both of our funeral processions together. So I'm going to let you take yours first, and then I will jump into mine.
Well, my my idea was is that you came up with the idea for last week, so I'm like, all right, I literally looked at, I have a uh D1 random encounter table, and one of the first ones on there is the players run into a funeral procession along the road, and I sent a text to you saying, um, the encounter for this week is a funeral procession, but something isn't as it seems. And when I first looked at your encounter, I was like, he went with the undead theme. I know he did, and I'm like, man, I don't want to, like, as much as I want to put, some type of crazy zombies or undead fiend or something like that. What if they're faking a funeral because they're trying to get these something to somewhere else to experiment on them, to do something on them.
Okay.
So the base for my encounter is I've got the cult fanatics, which they're not a crazy CR, especially for this level, because we said 5 players at level 5. But they're magic users. They're able to do stuff like uh, cast command, inflict wounds, hold person, spiritual weapon. They're able to make two melee attacks, and it's one of those things that they have enough stuff that I don't think it's impossible for them to be like overwhelmed, because they're not well armored. They don't have a lot of hit points, but it's one of those things that if the cultists, who they're basically cannon fodder in this encounter. Um, but the real encounter, I think, begins is if they talk to them and realize something's up, or they notice that, hey, something's trying to get out of these coffins that they're carrying. Um, that's when I think this encounter becomes interesting, because they're like, are they transporting something that's alive? Is that something that's undead? They don't really know. Well, in my encounter, the thing that's uh in the coffins are a pair of Gith Yankee warriors. And I don't know how much you know about the Gith,
No,
Um,
nothing.
but they're known for they're they're these beings that are like their home is like the astral sea. A lot of times you'll find them as slaves to mind flayers. Um, they're very interesting like creatures. I want to say I'm trying to remember what their home plane is, and I'm blanking out off. I want to say it's the uh not pandemonium. It's I forget off the top of my head, but they have like their own home in another plane, in one of the outer planes. But it's one of those things that if they were to accidentally come to this world and then be trapped and held by cultists, are the players going to see them as monsters and as foes? Are they going to try to befriend them and help them get back home? It's one of those things as a DM. I love giving these very open concepts to their players so that they can figure out, okay, we figured out the fanatics are these cultists, these priests or whatever. They're bad people. They're doing something bad here. We may not fully understand it, but they're doing something bad. And you free these Githyanki, and all of a sudden you're like, well, are we going to fight these guys? Are we going to help these guys? Are we just going to let them go on their way? Maybe the Githyanki warriors just want to run away. Um, it's it's one of those things, and I would definitely put a big language barrier between the Githyanki and the party, because I'm trying to. The only languages they know is Gith, so they don't know Common. They don't know any other language, and they also have like stuff that they're able to use 3 times a day, like Misty Step, Jump, and non-detection. So they're great at hiding, and um, are able to run fairly well away from this. So if they open up these caskets and these guys run off, they're they then have a, well, do we need to chase them? Are we worried about them? It becomes a whole uh problem that we need to fix. And I love that, giving that open-ended idea to your players. Now, what did you think whenever I gave you the kind of prompt?
So, kind of what I was thinking is I was going to use Fanatics initially. And this is before you even sent me yours that I changed off of the Fanatic. Because it was my thought process was I want this group of undead to basically be stuck in a loop, cursed forever to have to repeat the death march from the castle to the graveyard, back to the castle to the graveyard, constantly patrolling the road between the castle and the graveyard, stuck and cursed to do this for eternity. So the way that I set this up is, um, there is an indentured spirit that is the coach driver with a minotaur skeleton pulling the coach while it is flanked by 4 skeletons. The coffin on the back of the carriage has 2 skeletal uh, alchemists standing over it, and you don't know what's inside of the coffin. So when you get close, the indentured spirit, the minotaur, and the 4 skeletons will engage anyone that comes near the carriage, while the alchemists do not leave the side of the coffin, will not come off of the carriage. The only time that they will attack is if someone directly moves towards the coffin. Um, I like having these. The players have to make the choice to go over there. I like these little triggers that happen. They could kill the indentured spirit, the minotaur, and the skeletons, and never approach the carriage and never have to deal with the alchemist, but they won't know what's inside of the coffin. Now, the issue.
It's the shiny red button theory.
Yep. Like, if you don't get close to the coffin, those skeletal alchemists will not do anything. They will stand there. If you get close to the coffin while engaged with something else, they'll ready an action. That's how I would play it as a DM. They'll ready an action. If you turn towards the coffin, they will initiate that action. Um, but then you take out the spirit, the minotaur, the skeletons. You're standing there and you see this nice big black coffin and these two skeletal alchemists, and you're like, do I just leave them or do I go up to it? And if you go up to it, that's when the big encounter happens. And I used the undead uh withers. Now it could be any character, but I took into account the plus to hits on everything because I kind of made a very easy setup last time. This one is definitely more difficult. But going up to the coffin is the reason that everything is stuck in this loop. Uh, Withers, the head of this castle, forever condemned to ride in his coffin back and forth from his castle to his gravesite, never being allowed to be laid to rest. It's kind of a monster for this level. I mean, he's cast in telekinesis at the 5th level. He's got 1 slot for that. He's got a multi attack. He's got drain life. This is definitely, if you initiate this coffin and he comes out of the coffin, you go from a pretty standard in passing fight, like not too difficult, to you now have 2 skeletal alchemists who lob acid. I believe that's a multi attack also. Yeah, they have 2 lob acids per, and then you have withers that can just absolutely unload on the party. And if you're not ready for withers when he pops out, the party's potentially going to have some issues going forward.
Yeah, I agree. Like it's definitely a much harder encounter than you put up last time. And I love placing stronger stronger things, stronger monsters in front of a weaker party to see, well, what are you gonna do? Are you gonna run? You gonna fight? Do you have a crazy strategy that might work? Let us know. Figure it out.
Yep.
And I love giving players that sort of the ability to think outside the box to beat something stronger. Now, let me ask you this: what sort of loot is there if they defeat this encounter?
I didn't go through and place exact loot, but all of the loot would be contained within the coffin. You would get the general short swords off of the skeletons. Like you might find something mundane on the Minotaur. Not really getting anything off the Indentured Spirit. If you want the good stuff, you got to defeat Withers or figure out how to get to the loot without Withers having to be defeated if you can. Um, but it would be kind of along the lines of not super powerful. I'd probably go off of some sort of loot table, but it would definitely be um, probably 1 to 2 magical items of rare quality, and then probably 2 to 3 of the common quality uh, magic items, and then set a gold price. You might find a crown or a couple rings on him that you could probably sell for a decent amount of gold on top of the magical items.
Yeah, I see. For my encounter, I think the only thing that I would really make, uh, if something had a magical item, I would give like one of the Githyanki warriors a magic, like a +1 sword or
Hmm.
something like that, like a +1 great sword. And I wouldn't make it wouldn't be something that I would like be super. I feel like it would be a deadly encounter, but it's one of those ones that I feel like they could almost talk their way out of, for lack of a better word.
Yep.
Where yours is kind of black and white in terms of this happens, the players do this, this happens. Mine is much more open-ended, I
Diplomatic.
guess is the way I want to put it, where they could, yeah, yeah, it's one of those things that they could kill the fanatics and then befriend the gift, and the gift thanks them by giving him the sword. You know what I mean? And they make this almost a trivial encounter if they were able to do that. But again, they're making some persuasion rolls. They're making some insight rolls. Um, it's not simply oh, you just have to make friends with them.
Yeah, definitely. And see, and not always having those fight encounters where you have to have the finesse to be able to talk these NPCs into, siding with you, or figuring out that you're helpful to them and not fighting. We just had one of those. Actually, I believe you were gone for that moment. We just had one of those moments in our campaign, where we were being attacked. We were under assumption that this character could potentially be friendly, so I bear hugged him and told him that I wasn't gonna hurt him if he wasn't gonna hurt me. Like, sometimes figuring out how to not fight can be just as fun and challenging as getting into a 30-minute, drag out fight with your characters. You got to mix it up. And I do think that we've got a pretty straightforward, you fight or flight, or you fight and do a little diplomacy. It's a good mix here.
Well, and I think the other thing is this is another thing for the DM is setting up expectations is one of the hardest things that it takes a DM to do. Is if you're looking for someone and they turn out to be a bandit leader, all right. Well, you're looking for that person not because you want to join their bandit crew, but because you need them for whatever it is you're looking for. And it might be one of those things where you have to bribe them. You have to um, do them a favor in turn, or maybe you owe them a favor for doing you a turn. And that's where things can get kind of interesting because if you owe a favor to a bandit leader or a criminal boss or something like that, all of a sudden it's like you could call in that favor right when you least expect it, or right when your players are kind of going, "Ugh, we're a little busy at the moment, but you're calling in this favor now."
Mm-hmm.
It's useful and it's always interesting.
Yeah, definitely. Um, I'm digging making these encounters. Um, Hopefully as time goes on, we can start to kind of source people. I mean, we might have to hit up one of the discords and be like, "Hey, give us if you wanted to see an encounter happen, give us two stipulations. Give us creatures and a short backstory, and then we have to build out an encounter based on that." Um, I'm a huge fan of like listener feedback and suggestions and playing off of those things. So, um, I I know we're 2 episodes in.
I would even take it a step. I would take it a step further if we got a big enough community around us. I would love to see us run like I would first off, I'd love to see you DM one of these encounters and just have people make up a level 5 character and have people make a mock group and spend an hour in an encounter and see what happens. And it would be interesting because it'd be interesting to see how things interact if the party makeup makes a difference, eh, and all sorts of things like that. Because if you don't have a high charisma character versus having a high charisma character, it could drastically affect how these social encounters really work.
Mm-hmm. I'd 100% be down for that, which is funny because I've actually been thinking about and kind of just jotting down notes and stuff about something that I wanted to try. And it actually comes from me listening to Vox Machina versus the Mighty Nine. Um, like a gladiator arena, like just call it Friday night fights, basically. Characters are never the same. Anybody that comes in and plays gets to create a level 20, but there's a stipulation where one Friday night fight might be okay, it is a fighter and a cleric versus a fighter and a cleric. The two opposing teams have to create, they can create anything in the fighter, anything in the cleric. Same on the other side, and they have to fight. And then the next week, it might be rogues and rangers, whatever it might be. You might have 3-man groups, 5-man groups. I've been thinking about trying to figure out a way to make like one shot, simple, like 1-2 hour. They battle each other. There's traps in the arena. I've been thinking about that because I've never DM'd, and I kind of want to. And I think doing an arena DM type thing might be kind of interesting.
The other thing I'll say about that is I've ran a couple of the like free for all battles. I did it was one of those things where the DM wasn't able to make it that week for whatever reason, and we just decided to do a full on melee, and it was a lot of fun. But the other thing that I think the big problem with that is that you're going to have a lot of people going, oh, my build's better than yours, or oh, you got lucky, da da da. And the other fun thing that I can definitely say is that check out if you make like encounters. Imagine it's a like festival ceremony, and they're fighting uh a young I'll say a young red dragon, and that's you have to make a party, and then you're fighting a young red dragon in the arena, you know. That's the
Okay.
new sort of encounter that you're building each time. And like I said, you can do a lot of things with that, and it cuts it down to very very simple. You make an introduction. You say, "Hey, you guys are here to fight this thing together. Here you go," and it pushed that mode very quickly of, "Hey, let's get tactical. Let's get you know thing," and it's something that won't cause a lot of role play, but I think there's I feel like our games tend to be more tactical in general,
Yep.
but that's just how we like to play it, and it's fun for us.
Oh, yeah. Uh, I'm not the greatest role player. I try every once in a while, and then I feel like I'm dropping the ball. So then I'm like, okay, how can I set up this next move to benefit my party? I'd rather spend my time doing the tactics than, role playing out my character's voice and everything. I wouldn't mind getting into the role playing, but and I kind of think, like you said, with the arena, it would be more of a from start to finish. It's a brawl. There's no you're not talking your way out of it. You're not searching for treasure. It's you press go and it's fight on from the start to the finish. After the introductions are done, play the game.
And that sounds like fun.
I'm slowly working at it. It might be a little ways off, but I do like the idea of if we were ever to build out a community going forward, having community encounter nights where you run a couple community members jump in with preset characters and play through an encounter that maybe we crowdsource the encounter for, or we make the encounters and have the community play through. I really like that idea. But yeah, anything else for tonight? I think it was a short night.
No, that I like you said, there wasn't a lot of news. There was our usual stuff, and that's all I got for tonight.
All right, sounds good. We'll start to wrap this up. I've got work in a glorious 6 hours. I love overtime. Getting worked out through the summer here, but we're gonna wrap it up. Stop by the Twitch, twitch.tv/dragonheadspod. You can hit that follow button. We'll give you a shout out on the show if you do follow there. If you do happen to sub, we are affiliates. You can sub over there also. You get a shout out. You can find the show over on Twitter at dragonheads2. Email the show, dragonheads216@gmail.com, and follow the show right here on that Twitch channel, twitch.tv/dragonheadspod. We record Thursday nights at 9 p.m.-ish Eastern Time. Our intro music is Self-Induced Psychosis by my buddy, Mr. Kyle Wynn. You'll be able to find his Bandcamp link in the YouTube video. We do appreciate everybody coming by. You guys have a great night. Play some dragons.
Good luck, adventurers.